Hello Form 3 class, this is Mr. Ken once again, and today I'm going to switch gears and go back to paper 1. Today I want us to look at oral skills. We will look at several things under oral skills. We understand this is quite an easy paper among the 3 papers in English, but it requires a lot of practice because it covers very many things under oral skills. So I'll go through oral skills and look at some of the things that are tested there. Then we'll go through them in detail just to acquaint you with what is required of you. The first thing we should start with is what we call the riddling process. A riddle is one of the short forms that is set in English paper 1. There are several types of short forms. We have proverbs and wise sayings. We have puns. We have tongue twisters. And tongue twisters. Jokes at times, but not normally tested. The most ones are proverbs, puns, tongue twisters. These are the most commonly tested areas. Now, tongue twister normally comes with about 5 to 6 marks. They'll ask you about the characteristics, the riddling process, and other things. So let's look at the appropriate steps or stages in the riddling process. This is something you just have to understand, the riddling process, because it will not carry less than 5 marks in an exam. We have what we call an invitation. 1. This way the challenger draws the attention of the audience using an opening formula. For instance, I have a riddle. He'll start with that. It challenges or draws the attention of the audience using an opening formula. For instance, I have a riddle. Then the second stage is the acceptance, where the respondents respond or accept to take the challenge. For instance, they can say, throw it. I have a riddle, throw it. The third process, or the third stage, is the challenge, or the riddle itself. The challenger poses or gives the riddle itself in the third stage. The fourth stage is the guess of the answer. The respondents try to answer, provide guesses. Then lastly, we have the prize, the fifth. The challenger asks for a prize in order to provide a solution in cases where respondents fail to answer it correctly. The prize is given. Then lastly, we have the solution. The challenger gives the right answer to your riddle. So basically, how many stages? 1, invitation. Secondly, acceptance. Invitation, I have a riddle. Acceptance, throw the riddle. Thirdly, the challenge of the riddle itself. Fourth, guesses or answers. Fifth, the prize. Then lastly, the solution. So the riddling process is something you should always have it in your mind, because it can be said anytime. And I've told you it will carry no less than 5 marks. They can go further and ask you about the characteristics of tongue twisters, the functions of tongue twisters, and who is the appropriate audience for tongue twisters. Once you cover those 4 areas, you're good to go. Body language. A common term in English paper 1, but most of us students are yet to understand what entails body language and what does not. You've been given a poem, an oral poem in paper 1. Or you have been given a short narrative, performance-based narrative in paper 1. The examiner asks you, assuming you are to perform the above narrative before your class, state some of the body language you use. Or what kind of body language would you use to make your performance exciting? So we need to know what entails body language. 1, there's something we call nodding. Nodding is a form of body language. Smiling. Smiling is a form of body language. Sitting posture. For example, you have upright posture or leaning forward. That's a form of body language. And it signifies several things, of which I look at later when we break down this. Sitting posture is a form of body language. Dancing is a form of body language. Clapping and applauding is a form of body language. Laughing is a form of body language. Frowning is a form of body language. Waving is a form of body language. If you break it down, you call it a gesture. But at the end of the day, it's still body language. Stamping your feet is also an example of body language. So these are instances of body language. Do not mistake them. Nodding, smiling, sitting posture, either upright or leaning forward, dancing, clapping, or applauding. There's a difference between clapping and applauding. Applauding is not necessarily clapping. Applauding will inform stamping your feet, adulating, shouting, all those forms of approval. You can call them applauding. Laughing is body language. Frowning, waving, and stamping our feet. Now let's go further and look at examples of verbal skills, or verbal cues. Verbal cue. What is a verbal cue? It is mostly something that we use, that we perform using our mouth. It's verbal in nature. It comes from our mouth. You have been given a poem again. Then the examiner states, what kind of verbal cues will it be appropriate when performing the above poem? State the example of a verbal cue you will use when performing line 7 of the poem. So let's look at those examples of verbal cues. 1, we have what we call voice projection. Voice projection, voice projection. This is how audible, how high your sound is. You can project your voice in order to be audible. Voice projection. You project your voice in order to be audible or to enhance audibility. So voice projection is one example of a verbal skill. Secondly, another example of a verbal skill is what we call tonal variation. You vary the tone of your voice. Why? To break monotony and create interest. To break monotony and create interest. You vary the tone of your voice. And I've told you musicians are very good at this. They can vary the tone of their voice to pass a particular message through their lyrics. If a musician wants to portray sadness or sorrow, they'll vary the tone of their voice to indicate sorrow. If they want to indicate love, they'll vary the tone of their voice to bring out love. Same as a poet. If you want to give a sad message through your poem, you'll definitely vary the tone of your voice to show message. Secondly, you also vary the tone to break monotony. You cannot narrate from start to finish with one tone. It will be boring and monotonous. So you vary the tone to break monotony. Same as a singer. You cannot sing with the same tone from start to finish. Your song will be boring and monotonous. So you vary the tone of your voice to break the monotony and to create interest in your work. Third type of verbal skill, verbal device, or a verbal cue, it is something called stress. Stress. Kwa Kiswahili tunasema nini? Kutilia mkazo. Stress. Stress, to emphasize on certain issues or points. You stress. How do you stress? When you pronounce a word that is stressing, you'll put a lot of effort when you're pronouncing that word. It will come out clearly because there's some stress on it. You're emphasizing on the message. That's why you stress on the message. So stress is another form of a verbal cue. Intonation. Now, most students have a problem differentiating between tonal variation and intonation. Tonal variation is basically varying the tone of your voice to break monotony and create interest. Intonation, on the other hand, is used to express different feelings, different moods, different meanings. Intonation. High intonation, it can be used to express excitement. It can be used to express anger at some point. Low intonation can create a mood of sadness, a somber mood, melancholic mood. So intonation is a bit different from tonal variation. Then the other type of verbal cue is what we call proper articulation. Proper articulation is simply proper pronunciation of words. Proper pronunciation of words. That's what we call proper articulation. Proper articulation. Proper pronunciation of words. So when you look at verbal cues that you're supposed to use in English, paper 1, voice projection to enhance audibility. Secondly, tonal variation to break monotony and create interest. Thirdly, stress to emphasize on certain points and issues. Then you have intonation to express different feelings, different moods, different meanings. Then you have proper articulation that enhances pronunciation. Now, we have verbal and non-verbal. Non-verbal mostly do not involve the use of our mouth. It is non-verbal. We communicate without speaking. Non-verbal devices. We also call them paralinguistic or extra-linguistic devices. Paralinguistic, extra-linguistic, because they are extra to our verbal message. It is non-verbal, but it is extra. It is extra, it is paralinguistic to the verbal message. It is used to reinforce the verbal message. That's what we call it, a non-verbal device, or paralinguistic devices, or extra-linguistic devices. They are devices that rarely use word of mouth and are used to enhance the verbal message. Now, we'll continue with that in our next part of this class.